coming up over the next few months. So thank you to staff who've put all of this together, and welcome to the meeting staff, councillors and members of the public who may be watching. Right, first up, we'll go straight to people and transformation and the information services group update. Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you and good morning. Whilst I will take this report as read, there's just a few things I'd like to highlight. And first, I tried to meet a few of you and talk to a few of you in the morning tea, just to introduce Teresa McCallum, who's sitting at the table here next to Chloe, who's our new Chief Digital Officer, just been with us maybe 3 weeks now, has got a great deal of local government experience and private sector experience and spent about 12 years with Christchurch City Council and was integral in the Smart Christchurch program. So you'll have a lot of questions for her, and she's obviously working and leading Isabel and Scott, who have been in a number of these meetings sharing with us. I know that this has already been highlighted through the Chief Executive's report previously, but wanted to really congratulate the team on the ALGM result in the customer service area. 4 out of 80 is a pretty spectacular result given some of the previous results we've had. And with our drive as part of the transformation program to really lift the customer experience and to move towards that stretch goal of 90% of calls being resolved with first point of contact, that's heading in a very good direction. I also want to highlight the work that the library's doing in the dementia-friendly space. There's some really cool work being done there to ensure that our staff are trained and skilled to be able to serve all members of our community, and that's a bit of a focus in that area. And I would hope in time that that would be something we could look at right across council. It would be pretty exciting. Good to see numbers coming up in the Opera House. Want to acknowledge our retirement of Christine Hall from our archive space. She's been a key feature there for some time, and so yeah, wish her well in her retirement. And also, it wasn't ready in time to make the report, but Imogen Stockwell, our curator of the Forrester Gallery, has left us. She has been on parental leave and has made the decision not to come back, so we are now advertising in that space to find a curator for the gallery. I think that's about it. We're open to questions and allow the staff here to answer those as they come up.
Thank you very much. And yeah, on behalf of councillors, just congratulations to the customer team for becoming 4th out of 80 councils. Very great achievement and definitely the direction we want to be heading in. So thank you to them and well done. And also just in the memory and care for people in the libraries. Been along to a couple of sessions there, and just seeing how much the people involved have appreciated that. So well done to Jenny and her team for initiating that, and just a bit of outreach into the community. That's just part of making sure that people feel included and that their needs are taken care of. So well done. So, councillors, on to questions or comments in this particular activity. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I have a few. One at a time, or how do you want to deal with this in the future?
Topic by topic.
Okay, well, very sorry to hear about Imogen leaving, by the way. She decided to become a full-time mum. Yeah. She was having a real impact on the gallery, I thought. Just the question about the rates rebates, probably as much for the public reading the document as ourselves. We make the point that there's more than $500,000 in the 2022-23 year, and we've got about 446,000, nearly, 446,000 plus, with a full rebate to each ratepayer of $750. But that's not money that other ratepayers are paying, is it? That's money that comes from the Department of Internal Affairs. So they pay the remission or the rebate. That is correct, isn't it?
That is correct, and we're administering that through our CLT team in finance here.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions in there? Councillor McCone?
Yeah, sorry, just a couple. Do we have a running total of where they're sitting at, be it cost versus income with people going in through the doors? And do we also have a running total of people going into the forestry gallery?
Yeah, Chloe. No, might be just activating still. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, so through the chair for the Forester Gallery, yes, we do have a running total of attendance figures, which is summarised in a graph in these reports. But if people would like to see it presented differently, totally open to feedback on that. In terms of the breakdown for the cost of the Opera House, we would be able to get that information. I'm assuming that was in relation to the Opera House shows and attendance. Yes, so I can work with the Opera House director on that and get that information.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, I've got some questions about the gallery and the museum as well, but before that, on page 10, just looking at the library, I'm just trying to correlate the quantitative data that we've been given here. We're told that the issues in January this year were 17,858, which I presume relates to books. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Councillor Hopkins, yes, it is.
So then my question is, if the issues relate to books, how can we conclude from the number of books issued, the percentage of the population using the library? It seems to me that that's those are two statistically incompatible things.
Through the chair, Councillor Hopkins, that's a really good question, because one of my concerns since I've been in my role as library manager is actually looking at our key performance indicators, because the percentage of population is not an accurate record of who uses the library and when they're using it. And for example, people who come in and use the library and they're using Wi-Fi, for example, they might not have books issued, but they are using the library. And for example, people come in for events, yet we can track those numbers, but our online stats as well are not reflected in the percentage. So it's not a good key performance indicator measure.
Well, supplementary to that, I note that the resident survey, which is perhaps more statistically precise, signalled last time round that 42% of those surveyed, only 42%, i.e. of the total population, used the library. So I'm just trying to work out how that figure is 42% and this figure is 66%.
Again, through the chair, Councillor Hopkins, that's another very good question, because through the resident survey, it's my understanding that only those people who have home phones actually get called, and that we know a large percentage of our population do not have home phones and in fact have cell phones. So the resident population is not being reflected again in the statistics.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bailey?
Thank you. Through the chair, if I could just make a comment that one of the objectives and key results that council set for us is in relation to the usage of our facilities, which includes the library. So there's a bit of work being done on establishing baselines of what data would be the right data to capture to then measure if we're improving our utilisation of those facilities. So that is part of our project going forward.
Thank you. Museum and Gallery, Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, good figures, but just in passing on page 12, good Opera House numbers. Just looking at the gallery, on page 13, there's a reference to work continues on stage 2 of the Forester Gallery Cultural Facility Development Project with staff working closely with the property team. Now, we saw a design for this, and I can't remember if it was last year or even in the last year of the last term, the last council. And both the mayor and I think a couple of other people actually commented on the fact that the design was awful. And all the box at the back was profoundly unattractive. And the proposal was that we would look at some form of external treatment, maybe a sort of a giant mural or something of that nature. And we were going to be engaged in that process and have a chance to provide feedback. And from that day to this, there's been a deafening silence. So what's afoot, please?
Through the chair, addressing Councillor Hopkins' question, we've been primarily focused on the factors that I suppose the biggest cost drivers in terms of working on the climate control for the building and the structural engineering. However, the exterior of the gallery is also an important consideration, and I'm looking forward to coming to council, I expect in May, with some updates and to continue that conversation. We've also begun some discussions with iwi regarding their thoughts on what they might like to see represented on the exterior of the building. So updates forthcoming.
Yeah, I don't recall saying it was awful. I think bland might have been a description that we used, and there was definitely opportunities to turn that blank canvas into something a bit more. But yes, anyway, back to you, Councillor Hopkins.
No, that's a fair point. I may have chosen the wrong adjective or noun to describe the earlier comments. Look, I just the numbers at the gallery, archive, and museum continue to disturb me. If you look at the numbers for January, I think we're saying 771, and I sort of tried to work out how many days it was open. But basically, assuming something like 28 days or something of that nature, we end up with about 30 people a day going in there. If we look on page 15 at the archive, the numbers once again are down substantially in January relative to January last year. And if we look at the museum, it's even less than the gallery, only 600 in January. So, I mean, if these were facilities that were required to essentially put people through the turnstile to justify their existence, they'd be all closed down. Because they're just not getting enough foot traffic and they're not pulling enough people in. I mean, essentially, where's the sizzle and where are we've got to get more numbers in. How are we going to do that?
Through the chair, addressing Councillor Hopkins' question, personally, to put the archive numbers into context, they are very small numbers that we're looking at. So I would say that the statistical fluctuation in those is of less concern to me. It's very hard to predict when someone might start researching a new property they've bought or their family history. And also we have been encouraging more people with the archive to self-serve online rather than needing to come into the facility. So I think the archive numbers don't concern me. Museum and gallery numbers are of some concern to me, and we're working very hard as a team to drive people through the doors because, as you say, that is what we're in the business of doing. Our staff work very hard to put on the exhibitions and programs that we do, and we expect that they attract a lot of community attention. We're still seeing, I think, the effects of the COVID pandemic on our tourism numbers, and with Waitaki tourism, overall, I think that's still an area that we'd like to see. Previously in the summer months, in the 14 odd years I've now worked for the museum, we would see a huge influx of international visitors, and we still haven't seen that return to the levels it was. I'm hoping for us to be doing the museum's Aotearoa National Visitor Survey later this month, and that will give us some more detailed feedback that will only speak to people who are currently using the facilities. Finally, I would encourage all our elected members to help spread the promotion of our events. I know our Te Muka pottery exhibition at the museum is proving really attractive and is attracting people from out of town. So the more that everyone can help share the promotional material we have, because we get good feedback when people come in, it's getting them through the door.
Yeah, I got emailed by someone who'd been to the museum recently and was just overwhelmed with praise compared to how it had been before. And actually, I mean, looking at the numbers, museum numbers are actually looking pretty good, I think. They were down a bit in November and December from the previous year, but every other month they are, in many cases, significantly up. And in January, they're up on last year, which was up on the year before. So the trend there is actually pretty positive, I think. Yes, we'd like a lot more people to go through, and we've got to do what promotion we can. There's also having a bit more to think about how can we get more people in? We don't have a normal shop front as such with those buildings that we have. It's a stone wall, covered over windows and a doorway. And I'm sure Chloe and her team are doing what they can to using flags and banners and various things to get people in. But do we need to be doing some more thinking about what treatment on the street can we do to actually show people more about, there's a reason to go into this building. So that's probably all I'd say on that one. But inside the buildings, magnificent and really good feedback, and looking forward to the stage 2 of the Forester Gallery. Deputy Mayor Halilele.
Thank you through the chair. Just following on from that, could that be potentially linked to having to put on hold the culture and heritage strategy? So there's a marketing kind of plan that sits alongside it. And then probably just another comment just around the metrics, that are given to us, just to include like a qualitative, a bit of an analysis in terms of how you're presenting the information, because there's lots of good information that, like in feedback from the community and visitors. It just kind of gives just a single lens, like when we're looking at just figures only. But there's another side of the story narrative that we need to kind of highlight, and that will kind of help boost with any other external funding opportunities as well. So just a couple of comments from me.
Through the chair, yes, appreciate those comments around qualitative aspects to the report. So we'll add in some of that information in future, and hopefully the Museums Aotearoa Visitor Survey, which we're doing at the Museum and Gallery, will provide some of that in a nationally benchmarked framework. And yes, I'm hoping to take the opportunity with that strategy work to then flow that into marketing, and also looking at the programs we're offering and really the whole suite of what is happening in the facilities.
Thank you. Councillor Blacklow, then Councillor Percival.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there was an opportunity in this part of the activity update to incorporate some of the data from the information centre service that we contract to Whitestone Civic Trust, and using that as a kind of proxy against some of the other statistics we're looking at to kind of see if things are shifting in relation to visitor, because I note with the data that's collected there at present, January recorded 4,500 visitors to Whitestone City or the information centre, up on 3,500 same time last year.
Through the chair, yes, I'd be happy to see if we can source that information. Always keen to have comparative statistics so we can see if we are following trends or if we're not.
Suggestion. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, just back to the library on page 10. The note under the data regarding koha, which to me is a donation or a gift. How does that affect borrowers, and how do you utilise in koha statistic? How does that work?
Through the chair, Councillor Percival, koha is our library management system. So what we've been doing over the last probably 6 months or so is we've been going out to our community libraries and giving them access, ensuring that they have access to the same library management system as that we're using in Oromaru Library. And because of that piece of work, we're actually doing quite a significant data cleanup. So you will have noticed from our last report, a percentage of people who are engaged in the library, are not engaged in the library, sorry, who are members of the library was 68%. We've done some data cleanup, so it's dropped. So that was my note saying, please just have a look at these results. That will change, of course, once all of our community libraries are on the Koha Library Management System.
I don't really understand that, but to me, you go to a library, you take your card in, you get a book, swipe it and come out again. I don't understand what all this is about, but if it's good, so be it.
It's the software they use to make sure they track the book and track your card and know what, know where the books are. So, and it's free. There we go. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think someone amongst us must take the challenge and take the position of a Philistine. We're spending an inordinate amount of money for a community on these services, and yet we're constantly being beaten around the head that we're not providing roads to a certain level, et cetera, et cetera. I asked the question rhetorically, are we comfortable and justified in continuing to spend this money in the community?
Thank you for that rhetorical question. By definition, you're not wanting an answer. So it is a genuine question.
I think, you know, that's a good question to ask, but probably not in this environment. I think, yeah, we are going through an annual plan and a long-term plan process where all that needs to be scrutinised in terms of what we invest in all of our services. I think it's, you know, probably not right to ask it of, you know, the staff you've got in front of you there, but we should definitely keep that question in mind as we're going through that process as to, you know, what the right levels of funding are in, you know, relation to what our community can afford and what we expect in terms of the, you know, delivery and the output and outcomes from those services.
Through the chair, I'd like to respond to that question. Culture defines who we are as a community, and without our cultural facilities, we don't have a community identity, and they're critical to our community identity. But further than that, our cultural facilities meet our wellbeing outcomes, and that's where the rubber meets the road every day. And I'm sort of speaking on Chloe's behalf as well, but every day the library makes the difference, and our cultural facilities, our museums, galleries and archives make a difference to people's wellbeing, and that's where people see the benefit of their rates. So I'd just like to remind council of that.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Look, I do have a question perhaps to Mr. Palmer, based on the fact that you've raised the matter that we need to kind of rethink all of these things. I would have thought that one of the things that you guys and the management team may be considering is an appointment. I mean, we're talking about having a new director for the gallery and so on, but it seems to me that there is a vacuum in and around the council, if you like, a vacuum relating to how do we make things more commercial, or how do we transfer costs from imposed rates to discretionary user charges and so on. So I'm really wondering, in terms of this transformation you're talking about, do you see some opportunity to have a marketing person or a kind of somebody who looks to try and monetize some of the things we do in a more positive and, if you like, I don't mean this in a belligerent sense, in a more aggressive way than we're currently doing? I know it's a very general question, but since you brought the topic up, I'm just wondering if it is on your agenda or list of things to think about.
So I didn't bring the topic up. The vacuums in the organisation, I understand, are kept in the basement. But in terms of, you know, that particular issue, commercialisation, I think we need to think about it in terms of our financial strategy, in terms of how commercial do we want to be. And so it actually starts around this governance table as part of that consideration, because we don't have an agreed governance direction in terms of commerciality at the moment. There are other aspects to this as well. So we're doing a lot of work through transformation on our performance management systems, and we don't actually have, a clear sight in terms of agreement at a governance level around what are the performance standards we expect across the organisation in the different services. And I think that's a topic going forward. So if you put those two together, I think there is scope for that, but I think it needs to be a conscious decision that starts around the governance table as to the direction, but cognizant of what the implications of that are. So we'd need to do some work around, what the potential impact is if we do become more commercial in certain areas on, the current users and whether that would preclude access to some of our services if we became more commercial and swung the balance in terms of user pays, or whether there are opportunities to generate more income without putting a sort of an extra charge on the current users. But I think it is work that needs to be done. I'd say it's not currently within the remit of transformation, but I think it could be part of that financial strategy.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Hopkins has regularly referred to the revenue and financing policy, which shows certain activities needing to recover some of their costs through fees, etc. And routinely it's critical that we're not achieving a number of those goals. So there are some measures in there, but they're on issues which are, I think, particularly complex or difficult to actually find that revenue from. And I think that's a challenge, and it's definitely timely to look at that. And as the governance, around this governance table, to come up with some decisions about what we want to see in the organisation and how that should look, without just, cutting it, a lot of the beneficial services that we're actually doing. Right, we are getting on half an hour into this session. We've still got a few departments left, given we're only on the first one. So just be mindful of that. So Councillor McCone, do you have a question on this report?
Yes, please. Just a bit of clarity on page 18 under the business continuity in the second paragraph. I presume this is part of transformation, is it? Currently upgrading into the cloud, which I'm computer illiterate, so ignore that part. But so it will have great benefit across the system, I take it from what I'm reading here. And does that feed on to integration with the queries from the customer base outside the system further down the road with transformation? So is it a start of a big snowball, I suppose is what I'm trying to ask.
Through the chair, addressing Councillor McCone. Yes, business continuity forms part of the transformation picture. It's very important. When Councillor Thompson referred to roads and infrastructure, the digital part of our service offering is like the roads and infrastructure for the online services. So business continuity will be part of that picture, as well as that the customer experience will be. So you were talking about a closed loop, were you, when you said to respond to the customer?
Well, a closed loop as such. So the inquiry may come through our system here and then respond to the customer. And can the customer themselves actually be able to get into some of that in the future?
Yes, absolutely. So there are, at the moment, we have Snaps in Solve as a part of our customer offering, which is used for citizens to be able to raise issues, for instance, potholes, whatever it may be. We will be integrating that into our system so that we can actually respond to them via the Snaps in Solve app. And we'll also be able to let them know when those issues that they've raised have been resolved. We'll also be looking at customer experience from just self-service perspective. So would you like to pay your rates online, which you can now, but there'll be other things, dog payment registrations, licensing, enforcement. Those services are going to be put online so that our customers can solve as much as possible at the first point of contact.
No, thank you. And hopefully there'll be a phone number there. If you can't work the system, you can ring someone and talk to them.
Absolutely. And not only a phone number, there'll also be multiple ways to come in and engage with people face to face.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else in the information services? Councillor Percival.
Yeah, on page 20, under quality services, what does it mean reducing the number of tickets in the service desk queues? What does that mean? I don't understand. It'd be good, nice to.
Through the chair, addressing Councillor Percival's question. What that means is, and I'll try and put it as simply as possible, when there are questions about IT, how can I want to have this service, whatever it may be, internally within the organisation, we raise what's called a ticket. And some areas have a backlog of tickets, and we are addressing those backlogs, so resolving tickets that have been around for several months, making sure that we've resolved them. So we're reducing the number of tickets that have been unresolved.
So that's not addressing problems. It's addressing requests for improvement, or
That does include problems, requests for services. It could be a software request. It could be I can't, or how do I, or help me with. So yes, we're reducing the number of problems as well as responding to requests for service.
Councillor McCone.
So moving on to page 23, and there's property files digitisation, which I'm reasonably covered, but Pam's property asset management, could someone talk me through that, please?
Scott.
Through the chair. That one is the asset management system. So it's been worked on for a while now, and it's just reaching its closing phases. It's one that was managing all our council-owned properties for when there's asset renewals and things like that. That one here is just almost at its closure now, just dealing with the final little tying up the loose ends, and that'll be completed.
Sorry, Scott, but it will do what?
Sorry, so that one is managing all the assets, all those properties to do with everything that property manage in that space. So if you've got an oven that needs replaced, if there's rents and things that need captured, it manages all of those systems.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, sort of information services. I hope you get a chance to meet the new IES graduate who joined us on the 4th of March soon. My question, going back to page 20, relates to the district plan review and the E-plan, and it talks about the mapping. And we've got a couple of images in our agenda showing pretty clearly what's rural and farmed and what's urban and so on. My question is this: if the council chooses to accept the advice of the district plan review subcommittee and amend the boundaries of some of the maps, how problematic or difficult is that likely to be on a less than 100% pure basis? In other words, could it be done reasonably easily whilst acknowledging that there may be one or two minor omissions or errors that could be corrected through the submission process when the plan is notified?
Through the chair, so that is a complex question. So I would say that through the mapping, we can analyze the impact of those decisions, and that would have to be analyzed within the planning team and the council. So there will be so after the proposed changes are done in the draft plan, there is a decision period, and that is a group decision. So that's the only thing that I can say, is that the mapping will support the decision.
I think part of the question may be more to Mr. Cook as to what the plan is, what part the planners play in making those amendments, which then go through. Not sure if you can answer that, Roger, but please.
Thank you, through the chair. Obviously, the lines on the map become quite critical in their placement, and it is a planning function to inform where those lines go, and then that's passed to the IS team to digitalise that information. I would be very reluctant that the council propose a plan with some doubt over those lines because of the method and the complexity of correcting them through a submission process that may or may not get picked up by the landowners themselves.
Thank you.
Right.
Councillor Hopkins.
Supplementary to that, I'm getting a wee bit anxious. There's debate about where the lines are and whether they're in the right place now. If the line is amended or moved, there is almost inevitably going to continue to be debate. My question was, how simple would it be to change the lines on the map?
Through the chair, so that is very easy. So we manipulate the data so that it represents what we want to see represented. So it's very easy.
I think the challenge is at the planning side of things, taking what they're being asked to have the changes and defining that on those different landscapes. So once they've done that's the hard work, I think, is what I'm hearing. And at the GIS end, it's not so difficult. But I am concerned if you are getting a little anxious, if you need to go and have a wee lie down or anything, but hopefully you'll be okay. Anyone else? Councillor Blackler, thank you.
Thank you. Just on the district plan review and the E-plan, I had a question as well around what the functionality might be like for the end user once the plan is proposed. And in the Timaru district plan process, you're able to essentially type your address in and it will give you your property and the listed current status versus what's changed, or something along those lines. Is that the same level of functionality that our community will have and as part of their tools to kind of understand the impact in their space?
Okay, through the chair. So yes, so we had, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a consultation period, and we had, so the council had a tool where the citizen could compare the draft plan with the operative plan, and there was a submission period for that consultation. Now we have an E-plan in place that will have the same functionalities. So the citizens will be able to compare, to extract information on their properties, and and to see exactly the data that is associated with their property.
Mr. Cook.
I'd like to take the opportunity to remind elected members that they have been sent a link to the current version of the E-plan, so they can experiment with residential addresses to see what they can find.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else on the IS side of things? Okay, thank you very much. And that finishes off for the that first chapter of updates. We now move on to 1.2, Heritage Environment and Regulatory Group Update, which quite appropriately we were merging the two in that last series of questions. Thank you to all the staff who have been involved in that first one. So now we'll go to Mr. Cook.
Good morning, thank you very much. Pleased to present the Heritage Environment and Regulatory Group Activity Update. Traditionally, this quarter sees a slight drop off in building consents and resource consents, etc. applications due to the extended holiday period. So some of the figures for activity do look a little down, but I'm pleased to confirm that February and March are starting to see them uplift again now. Happy to take questions page by page.
I think just to start a question, and it is around those numbers. There's been a lot of concern about building consents and so forth dropping off, and numbers of houses being built dropping off, particularly with interest rates and affordability issues. Is it too early to see any trend post-election around increasing back to earlier numbers, or what would you say from what you're aware of?
I believe it's still a little early to identify trend. Certainly national residential building was down circa 28% in the last reported quarter, which is obviously quite a drop. And I'm sure the current government will be looking to get that increasing again, but still a little early to see the trends.
No, thank you. Councillors, questions? Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. I had two questions. The first question was just a follow-up on a previous activity update question around tussock burning, which is obviously not appropriate at this time of year, but I just wanted to understand, you know, from the prior burning season, how many consents will roll over to this coming year that hadn't been resolved, and i.e. have any of those been resolved since we discussed them last? And then my second question was around consents on rural zone land for subdivision down to 4 hectare. I was just wondering if there's been any trends in that space, you know, based on the impending plan going to proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Blackler, through the chair. Of the 2 tussock burning consents since last time, I know one's been issued and for that one, and the other one's still with the landowner. Now they have ecological advice, so that's sitting with them to decide how to proceed. Another consent's just been lodged this week or last week, so very quiet in that space. But yeah, there's only 2 that were kind of outstanding. One's been issued in that time frame. The trend of rural subdivisions to kind of, I guess, land bank 4 hectare or bigger lots is continuing. So there's probably on average 1 or 2 a week of those. So it's pretty steady all around the district, so not just around Oamaru. So it's still ticking away, and talking to the local sort of surveyors, that they've got a backlog still to come in for those yet. So
supplementary to that, thanks, Mr. Campbell. What proportion of the consents for the 4 hectare properties would be on LUC2 land?
I can't give you that figure off the top of my head. There's probably more on the LUC3 land, so that's probably more common because it's a bigger chunk of the district. It's probably roughly half would be on LUC land and half not, just as a rough proportion, but we could get these figures if you wanted to delve into it. But it's fairly representative across the district, regardless of soil type. So it's just people with land that they want to subdivide going through that, but a fair chunk out LUC 2 to 3. Yeah.
Councillor Hopkins.
On to another matter, that's legislation, strategies, policies, etc. on page 28. There's the first one is a reference to the compliance and enforcement policy 2020 review and the draft diversion policy. It says that officers presented a draft compliance and enforcement policy and draft diversion policy to the governance team during a workshop on the 26th of April 2023, nearly a year ago, and are awaiting feedback. Now, I thought we gave feedback on the day, and I thought there were some questions we asked and some issues we raised. And I thought that officers were going to go away and amend or modify the policy in accordance with that, or at least produce a draft amended compliance and enforcement policy and diversion policy. So what feedback are you still awaiting?
Through the chair, yes, there was a lot of questions on the day at that particular workshop briefing session. There was information that we took away, but we were still of the understanding that council were going to meet separately and provide some feedback. So what we're waiting for is either there is feedback or there's no feedback. There was my understanding there was going to be a separate meeting that you were going to discuss what you wanted to achieve through that.
It's one of the potential topics I've got listed for our next governance only session. So hopefully we'll be able to cover that off then and give feedback into the. It's one of those things I think that sort of went out of mind and off our table, but something we've got to pick up again. Okay, any more questions? Another week from you, Jim?
Yeah, just on page 31, can somebody just give us a bit more information? It sounds fascinating and exciting, but what is Wonderscape, this 3D structure based on topography in conjunction with or collaboration with NOSLAM, with Geopark and the Penguin Research Centre? Can somebody give us a bit more info on that, please?
Is this in EnviroSchools? Where are you looking?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Roger, thank you.
I apologise, I don't have any information that at hand, other than to say that the EnviroSchools program is going absolutely nuts, very, very popular, lot of engagement with the schools at many levels, head teachers, teacher leads, and the environment school team is actually struggling to keep up with the level of interest at the moment.
No, that's good. Thank you. I think if that's the response to that can be emailed to us later on, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Any other questions in this chapter? Okay, there's none. Thank you very much to you, Roger, and your team. Thank you, David. And we now move on to economic development update, item 1.3, and got Mel Jones. Oh no, we don't have Mel Jones. We've got Cindy and Rebecca here to join us to answer any questions. So hand over to Mr. Palmley.
Yeah, Mel Centre, apologies, can't be with us today. Obviously, a lot of the work within this area is focused on delivery of the economic development strategy agreed by council. Council agreed to devote a considerable amount of the better off funding from the last government to this area towards placemaking, and then separately towards what's called the Forward Waitaki programme, which is focused on both entrepreneurship and the land elements of the economic development strategy. Like to congratulate the team in terms of how they've approached this, which is really a focused on a community engagement approach to how we take things forward. That can be challenging at sometimes, balancing the different views of the community, and it also can take more time than just leaping in directly with the solutions. But as you can see, throughout here in terms of the placemaking and the other economic development activities, we're seeking to engage with stakeholders, with communities, with residents in how we take those forward. And on that, I'll open up to any questions you have on any particular aspects of the work that are being undertaken in this area.
Thank you. Councillors. Let's start with you for a change, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. On page 36, I'm just curious to know, looking at this description of Oamaru North, with the initial approach to target improvements alongside the Transport Choices project being on hold, it goes on to say the ED team is working alongside other officers to explore new opportunities to link and leverage existing budgets more effectively to support community placemaking outcomes. What does all that mean? Does it mean the ED people are now going to kind of resurrect the Transport Choices project or reconfigure that money? And if so, to what? And is that kosher? So that's question number one.
I'll start on that. So the team were doing the right thing, which was saying that if we're going to do something around placemaking around Oamaru North, we need to look at how we can link with other activities going on in that area. And we had a good discussion as a team about there's too much focus going on how do we spend the better off money, and not enough in terms of how do we do placemaking and make sure that it's sustainable, and how do we make sure we use all the resources that are going into a particular area to shape that, including existing council budgets and other initiatives that might be happening. So the termination of the Transport Choices programme caused a little hiccup because all the plans were based on linking in with what was a significant investment in that area. And so it's not trying to resurrect the Transport Choices programme, it's trying to now pivot and say, okay, well, if that's not happening, what is the best way forward here? How can we leverage this money, which is not a large amount of money for, quite a large area there, and how can we link it with what particularly other council departments are looking to do within that area, and make sure that we tie in with what the Parks and Open Spaces team are potentially planning within that area, so that we can use this money to best effect, given that we don't have that Transport Choices funding anymore.
Thank you. Yeah, well, look, some more questions then on the next page, page 37. When is this extended community engagement in Omarama going to end? And when are we going to get some kind of consensus and get some things happening there? How significant is the risk to the Puketapu track if additional funding is not secured? And I'm just wondering how widely you are casting the net to actually get people to pitch for or propose ways to deal with the Waitaki story and identity. I notice you've got a project team and briefs being developed and agencies to deliver are now being sought. Runak is making a commitment, but how many agencies are being sought? Is it an open tender or an open invitation? What's the process by which people can engage with the opportunity to help tell the Waitaki story?
Do you want to do Omarama?
I'll do Omarama. We actually do have a project meeting this Thursday afternoon. There is a small group in Omarama that are working on a project around the community hall, and they want to do that project first to get something on the ground, to use that as a way to get more buy-in from a wider group of people to work on other parts of the master plan projects. So it is moving slowly. We did have a couple of hiccups, but that particular project team is back on board and have been working really hard in the last few weeks to gather pricing and get a real understanding of a design concept and to move that particular project forward. With the Waitaki story, yes, expressions of interest did go out a couple of weeks ago to about 4 companies, and we're in the process of getting responding to questions from them, and that's being done through Sonia, and that's moving forward. And once Mel's back, then it'll probably really kick into gear.
Supplementary to that,
One more question.
oh, sorry.
So, I mean, you're right to pick up on Puketapu track, and I think one of the issues we need to be aware of in terms of all these projects that are funded by Better Off funding is that we are working to a deadline that the government has set for expending that, and they want to have clarity as to whether we are going to spend that or not. I know, there are some parts of government that are thinking that that money might be repurposed if councils don't look like they're going to spend it. So we need to have a plan, and we're having a discussion with the various project managers and other stakeholders, including that particular project, as to how we can move that forward and what the options are, given we haven't got all the funding in place at the moment.
Thank you, Alex. Just going back to the Waitaki story, you may say to me, I don't want to say who the 4 agencies are, but on what basis were they chosen? Right, who are they?
So I don't think we have to hand who they are, but there was a very clear criteria drawn up, and there are other stakeholders in this in terms of what they want to see out of it for the funding they're looking to put in. And there was a search done of who were the potential agencies that could deliver on that. It's quite a bespoke piece of work. And so, there was a targeted approach of those who might be able to deliver it, including local companies that might be able to deliver it as well. And I think there was a balance to be struck between, opening it up wider and being able to administer that process versus actually being able to get on with delivering against, the tight timelines we have for this funding, recognising that, there are a few number of companies, including locally, that could potentially deliver this.
Well, are there any local companies that have been approached?
Yes.
And have we looked nationally? I'm thinking about, I don't want to name names, but there are clearly creative entities that have actually succeeded in receiving international awards and recognition who operate in this space. Have we considered engaging with any of them?
Without knowing which ones you have in mind, I couldn't say, but that it hasn't just been a local search. It is, looked nationally as well as locally.
Councillor McCone.
Yeah, sort of carrying on from that in a certain extent. So page 35, could I have some more information, please, on the Oamaru CBD master plan development and the Oamaru CBD workshop, please?
The master plan, similar to the Waitaki story, there was an expression of interest that did go out. Apologies. Barkers were asked to do an expression of interest, and we sent them, Mel sent them a project brief. And they were chosen because they did the spatial plan for the Oamaru CBD. As for the workshop, we do have another workshop, a second follow-up workshop with this group of community members and council officers, and that's happening on Thursday as well. And so the first workshop was in December, and those 5 teams chose projects, and they have been working on them for the last 3 months. And so this next workshop will present what and where they've come up with their projects, and then how we move those forward and how they will work to start that revitalization in the CBD. And they will also help to inform the master plan work.
Mr. Conley.
So I just wanted to add to that on the master plan work. We're not looking to start again. There's a lot of work been done already, and it's a case of pulling a lot of that together and then filling in a few gaps. And so, process, the options were considered, and we felt if we went out to open tender on that, what we'd be opening ourselves up to is a lot more potential cost, as we'd be paying for someone to come up to date on all the work that's been done already. So after taking procurement advice, we thought it'd be more cost effective to utilise the agent who's already done a lot of the work to, update that, incorporate some of the existing plans and fill in some of the gaps.
Thank you. That's part of my question. Do we have stakeholder engagement? Is there a lot of input coming in from business owners or people that are actually involved in the system?
Apologies. Can you repeat the first part of that question? I didn't.
So the first bit, Alex will cover that off, but is the involvement from the stakeholder perspective? So is there interest from outside the council part of the system? Is the private enterprise coming on board with this?
The workshop or the master plan?
Both.
Well, certainly in the workshop, there's a wide variety of people that are participating in the workshop, which are business owners and residents and other prominent organizations that are part of these project teams for the workshop. The master plan is I'm not really sure on that. Mel's been leading that.
Sorry, just to say that it sets out in the report there that, part of it is a stakeholder engagement plan. And again, that goes back to my introduction. This is how we want to take things forward. It's not about council deciding, what's best for the community. It's about the community engaging with the councils to work out the best way forward. I think with the workshops that have been held, we've got a good base there of stakeholders, but clearly for this important work, we'll need to cast the net a bit wider and make sure that everyone's got the opportunity to input to it who has an interest within the town centre area. And that's obviously a considerable bit of work to achieve that. But that's part of the way we're approaching all this work, is to engage stakeholders, including local businesses who have a direct interest in the results of this work.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, moving on, if we may, last two questions before we look at the economic stuff, but the land use diversification, the ED team working with the group of landowners, if we can get some more information about that, I'd be grateful. And on page 39, there's a reference at the top of that page under business innovation and growth, entrepreneurship ecosystem plan and resourcing recommendation is developed and shared with stakeholders. What does that mean? And who's it going to be shared with?
What sort of information would you like about the land use diversification project, Jim?
Well, there's reference to the focus on new crop. Sorry, there's reference to the focus on new crop trials, on new crop types, the health and wellness market, natural health products and how they could be ingredients or final product, keeping the value chain, some of it, all of it here. So really, I mean, to what extent have any of these ideas been sown and actually are starting to actually produce some tangible initiatives or changes or, you know, actual physical implementation by individuals or businesses?
So in terms of physical implementation, we're looking at crop trials for this spring, and we've narrowed down into the health and wellness market with natural health products over a series of workshops with with a core group of landowners. And so we'll be able to do the crop trials and sort of test the whole way through that process to make sure that we're on the right track. And at that point, all that information will be available to other landowners to implement the same process. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the entrepreneur, oh, sorry, you go.
I just to come in on that in terms of the council's role. The council has been, working with and enabling a group of landowners with some expert input. The landowners are taking forward the trials. And the last meeting, they were looking to fund those themselves, but share the information more widely. The bit that, the Better Off funding has been used to bring those landowners together and provide some expert input in terms of market knowledge and understanding and, different plant types that might be used.
Who wants to talk about the entrepreneurship ecosystem?
I can have a go at that first of all. So it's an entrepreneurship ecosystem, bit of a jargony term. Essentially, it's looking at what are the right ingredients to support the growth of entrepreneurs in a particular area. And that's often bespoke to that area. So looking at, what is the availability of business support? What is the availability of, mentors? What is the access to finance to support entrepreneurs? What is the support that's needed for networks to do that? So, Rebecca's been taking a lot of work forward with the business community that started off with some events to start to really understand what was available for businesses out there and entrepreneurs, how current entrepreneurs were wanting to engage in supporting new entrepreneurs, which had some good responses to that on. But this is essentially about then pulling that together in the form of a plan as to where the gaps might be and how those can be filled by various different people out there.
Sorry, I did have one other question on page 39, if you'll allow me to ask it. There's a reference at the bottom of the page to 30 community-led events across the district during the inaugural Geopark Festival running from the 27th to the 29th of October last year. What were the numbers of people who attended those 30 community-led events, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have the information for that. Obviously, the geoparks just had a change of leadership and governance, but I'm sure they would be able to access the information from the event in October if you would like it.
Would be helpful, I think, for everyone, including you guys, I would have thought.
Thank you. I need to shoot out to make a quick call, but just hand over to Hannah, who has a question, and she can look after things for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the skill board and career development. And just that last paragraph on that section, just developing opportunities with community providers, which I think is a really good direction for us to maximize and leverage what other community providers are able to do. So yeah, thank you to Business South Director for Membership, Lloyd Maoli. He'd already come up with Haley, one of his colleagues as well, and they've done some introductions for IPICG to kind of do some work in that space and look at opportunities for the G Hub, Tech Hub, as well as youth enterprise scheme. But at the moment, it's delivered in schools, but it's not always accessible to others in the community. So just looking at opportunities to be able to make things a bit more accessible is a really good option. And I just wanted to make a comment as well about the generator program that had also come last year. Just to provide some startup business support for people in the community that are kind of doing their bit of side hustle. One of our locals, she's been chosen to take part in an arts exhibition in Auckland this weekend, and that's a direct impact from that kind of funding. So it's really helpful. So, yeah. Cool. Are there any other comments in this section?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I do have some on the financial stuff. I would note, if we can move to that, I'd note that the very significant decline in non-residential consents, car registrations and commercial vehicle registrations shown on page 41 is probably an indication of how significant the rural downturn has been in our district. But more to the point, I'm genuinely puzzled by, if somebody can explain to me the graphs on page 43, because what we're told in the text is that in the graphs below, the green line is 2019, the black line is 2020, the light blue line 2021, dark blue 2022, and the orange 2023. To get back to pre-COVID patterns, the green line and the orange lines would meet. But if you look on the next page, consistently, the green line is the lowest. And logically, to me, it would seem that that's post-COVID, not pre-COVID. So those graphs on page 43 just don't add up, especially when you've got the changes being shown plus 8.5 or the changes are minus 2021, 20 minus, well, look at in almost every instance, they're showing minuses, but the lines just simply don't relate either to the text previously or to those stats at the top of the graphs. Can anyone shed some light on that?
Potentially it's inflation and increased cost of living, because that's not showing a percentage change at the metrics dollars. So in 2019, stuff was potentially less expensive. It's more just how it's tracking, I think, that's of interest. Does that answer your question?
No, sorry, it doesn't. First of all, the 2019 line should be from right across. The only line that isn't right across is the green line, which would suggest to me that it's the most recent.
I think they just started recording halfway through that year, perhaps. So they've got the information from the 6th, which would be June. So maybe there's no data available prior to that. If 2019 was the most recent, it would be starting at 0 and finishing at 6, for example.
Yes, that's what I just said. Look, you may be right. It may be that we only started recording halfway through 2019. I find that I'm genuinely be surprised, but it is a possibility. If somebody could just have a look at it, because I rather suspect that what's happened is that the colour codes in the years have got inadvertently transposed or confused. And if you change the colour and the year, it would make more sense, but I cannot make sense of them as they appear on these pages now.
I think what would be helpful is just to look at the trends and the narrative, like that you have provided in this report. From my perspective, I'm looking at page 41 and there's some valuable information there that gives you a bit of a narrative around what's happening in our community. And I think that's the strategic level that we should be concentrating on as opposed to different colours or lines on the graph. So that that stats, it shows social demographics. It highlights a narrative around the lack of tertiary, like transition courses that are available locally. It highlights the need for social housing, but it also looks at those that don't meet the criteria, like our migrant community and demographic that aren't eligible to be on the social housing register. So I think just for us, I would be encouraging our governance team just to kind of look a bit around the strategic kind of information that we could be utilising from the information that you have provided, as opposed to just getting hung up on those little wee lines. I'm sorry, Councillor Hopkins. Yes, I'll pass it on to.
Well, I was just going to add, the author of the report isn't here. The data comes from Infometrics, so we'd need to take it away and just ask some questions about that. So, it's not our data, it's data that's given to us. So, there's all sorts of things I could speculate as to what it's, showing there. But I think we need to just ask the question offline.
Mrs. Bailey, did you want to make a comment? And then John.
Yeah, sorry to jump in, and I haven't been hugely over these graphs, but they do look quite correct to me, because the little purple dot on the left-hand side is the 2024, and it's showing the change this month against the top line of the orange, which is December last year. So if you look at fuel and automotive, it's just slightly underneath the purple dot now, underneath the orange line, which suggests it is minus 1.46%. So they do make sense, I believe.
Thank you. Councillor McCone?
Yeah, the information, it's only as good as the information put in there, and it's figures and turned into percentages. So, but it gives you a trend. Don't also forget these figures are actuals, not what's happened now. So these are in January, not now in March. And I think the thing we should really take notice of is that, from my perception, that financial snapshot we're getting is way out of date now with the advent of what's happening in the primary sector with the dry spell, with the advent of taxes coming in, schools going back. That spend, I think, is going to be completely the wrong way for what we want to do to grow the district. So we're not in a great space.
Thank you, Councillor Blacknut.
Thank you. It would be interesting to understand if when we use these metrics for reporting, if there was the ability to understand the overall consumption rather than the dollars spent, or inflation adjust, because it looks like we're spending more on X, but we might actually be, there might be less activity, just more dollars of spend, if you get what I mean.
The market view data, my understanding, it can offer that, because they will look at, they do an average, of a spend. And so you can see that and trend, and that can show you trends, that, goes up and down. And so that might be more relevant than Infometrics.
Yeah, the Infometrics data also takes into account inflation and tracks the spending in relation to inflation to see if there's true growth at nationally and district level.
These graphs we've got here.
No, not the graphs, but the Infometrics data in particular will take into account, so it's on page 40, that takes into account inflation tracking alongside what your GDP is.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'd be good just to explore if there was another way of having a look as well. Yeah,
we're really happy to analyze the information in a way that's most useful for you guys. We got the Infometrics data really close to when we were putting this together, so we haven't been able to analyze those points that Hannah mentioned around showing what's really going on in our communities. That's some new data sets that Infometrics have added, and we're quite excited about them because they just give us such a good base level as to what we should be doing.
Councillor Percival.
Yeah, page 41, bullet point 5, something I overlooked and hadn't actually seen. School attendance rates, 50.8%. That can't be right. Goodness, where are all the kids going? That's can you explain why that figure is what it is?
Yes, so the percentage that they've used isn't how many days the children are attending school. It's not that they're there 50% of the time and not the rest of the time. School attendance rates is, I can't remember exactly what the figure is, but it's, are they attending school 75% of the time? Yes, 50% of them are. So it's not that they're there 50% of the time, it's just that arbitrary metric that they attach to school attendance is down from where it was in the previous year and down from the rest of Otago. But I can get you that figure.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Just further to Deputy Mayor Halalai's point earlier about using this information strategically, one perhaps more a question for Mr. Palmley. How do we, apart from presenting this information to councillors quarterly, how does this information feed into our different departments at council and how is that used?
So at the moment, it's mostly used by the ED team. Certainly when we were developing the economic development strategy, we looked very hard at this data and going back quite a few years to help shape that strategy and what we're doing. The EDT can continue to look at it. But I understand other departments do look at this data as well. So certainly within looking at Mr. Cook's area, I think it's a key source of data to understand what's going on out there and what that means in terms of likely work, but it also is matched with some of the figures we have ourselves, for example, for building consents and what have you that are coming in. So it is used. It could possibly be used more than what we do currently, but it is used.
Councillor Cowles, then Councillor McCone.
I noticed on our BI dashboard that there's some figures very similar to this. I'm gathering this is where this is pulled from. Is that kept? I'm just wondering how up to date that is kept. I often jump in here and have a bit of a look because it's really interesting around the MSD benefits and those tourism revenue estimates and those sorts of things. Is that something that is live and kept up to date regularly?
I think we now get infometrics data that's quite current, and we do have a dashboard that we can go in, and I think we can manipulate that. I haven't played around with it, but they have created more opportunities for us to get more real-time data and get what we are looking for specifically.
Just, I guess, supplementary to that. I mean, we get this dashboard. I'm just wondering whether what I'm looking at when I look at this is current data or not. And I'm not asking for a question now, but it would be nice if someone could come back and just let me know whether that is flowing through, because it does give some really interesting trends when we're thinking about that strategic sort of stuff, whether we can, what we're looking at is the current data set. It does appear to be in here. It's very similar to the graphs, but it would just be nice to have confirmation that what we're looking at is current. Thank you.
Councillor McCone.
So I was just reading on page 39 as well, the geopark and under district promotional visitor economy. Do we have figures at all of what the geopark are people coming because of the geopark, or do we have to get out there and push it a bit harder, because it's an opportunity there that I think we're missing, especially with the current economic climate? And secondly, where are we at as far as that goes? So where can people find out about this? Is it nationwide? Is it international? Is it even in some of our buildings here that people come to visit? Are they aware of it?
Unfortunately, neither Cindy or I are completely across what's going on with the geopark in terms of what their strategy is. But we could certainly direct you to people who might have that information.
So I just add, I know, I mean, Tourism Waitaki, in terms of their promotions, which are, national and international, the geopark is a core part of, what they're promoting. I think, then feeding that through into understanding, how many people are coming here just for the geopark is hard to understand, but I think, they do have intelligence gathering, but we'd need to see what their latest figures are that, they do have surveys that I understand they undertake that give an understanding of why people are coming to visit Waitaki in the first place. There is more work going on in terms of how we promote the geopark better, but the geopark is, as mentioned, that has a change in governance and change in the staffing side of things as well there, and part of that work is looking at the potential for a discovery centre, and I understand a business case has been completed on that. That is, if it's not been submitted, is almost ready for submission to the government as part of the next round of that project.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the other thing is, do we have to comply with, can we have the geopark status taken off us if we don't comply with certain things annually, or once it's here for good? How does that work? Are the standards we have to sit to and get to and times we have to adhere to?
There are reassessments done. I can't recall what it is, every 3 or 5 years, something. Yeah, and there are, I think we've got the status on the basis that we've got some things to do, and a discovery hub is one of those elements of that. It depends on how grand we want to be, or the trust wants to be with that, as to how achievable that is or not. But I think that's just part of that discussion. Ask Councillor Blackwood if he has any comments on it as our representative on the trust, but if you don't, that's okay too.
I think it's all been covered off here. It's something that it would be good to understand better, Councillor McCone, but I think it's going to open up a lot of avenues that we wouldn't have otherwise had, in terms of there are known kind of patterns around specific tourists that actually basically go around and chase the UNESCO, the geopark, that they're a geopark traveller, if you like, and recent survey results nationally. I just can't remember the source of that survey, but indicated that most travellers, international travellers to New Zealand, are chasing essentially what the offerings of geotourism are. So it can only be of positive benefit to the tourism space, and then also the work that's happening in the Discovery Hub area is will provide further offerings in terms of what the geopark can deliver.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Just in terms of the projects that Cindy and I are involved in answer to your question, John, the placemaking and Forward Waitaki programs, we're certainly thinking about how the geopark informs the direction that they take, and making sure that we're kind of leveraging the opportunity that geopark gives, and vice versa.
Thank you. I'm just very, very, very mindful of the time. We've got less than 20 minutes left. We've got 4 topics. Luckily, they're all minor, like assets group. He says tongue in cheek. So, councillors, are there any other questions on this before we do move on?
Just want to go very quickly. On page 46, the reference to enabling safe and healthy communities, and talking about feedback on the dog control policy and bylaw review. It says here you got 247 pieces of feedback, and yet it then goes on to say you had 199 engaged visitors and 497 informed ones and 831 aware visitors. What does that mean?
So thank you very much for those who have been here for the ED session. Thank you both. And we're now on to comms. I actually wasn't even listening to you. I didn't realise, Councillor Hopkins, because I was trying to move myself onto comms. But anyway, Sonia was listening and she is ready to respond.
So that's just kind of the stats, how they display on our online engagement hub. So engaged visitors are the ones that like do the survey or use one of the engagement tools. Informed visitors are ones that spend a fair bit of time on a page. Or download a document, a supporting document or something like that. Aware are ones that have just visited the page and maybe had a quick look around and left. So you know that they've kind of had a look, but not necessarily engaged. And yeah, I think that explains it all. Pretty good.
Thank you. Anyone else with comms questions? Councillor McCone is almost gesturing. Yes.
Yeah, no, just a statement. I think it's a very important job at this present point in time, and just keep everybody informed, and you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, just make a comment that there's so much activity going on. You and your team are covering a heck of a lot of stuff. So thank you very much for that. Okay, councillors, we now move to Finance and Corporate Development Group and go to Mr. Hope.
Yeah, so afraid it's just me. There's a couple of illnesses that mean other people haven't turned up. I think finance and corporate development parts have been well covered. Maybe Jason's on the line if he needs to cover something in the community development space. Probably will just raise a couple of issues in relation to the rates section. We'll try sort of having far more of a focus on the number of assessments, not just the values that are sort of getting charged penalties, both the instalment and the arrears penalty, just because that will be I think a good early indicator of the level of sort of financial strain that the wider community is under. I think we've made really good progress with the arrears penalty and getting those arrangements in place or payments made. So, good to see the drop in numbers from the 879 for the first arrears penalty down to 242. It's only the arrears penalty that we can take real action on in terms of contacting mortgagees. But we do try and make sure that people don't sort of get to that situation in the first place. In terms of the arrears penalty, they've actually been very steady right across the year. So it's not getting better or worse. But it is a slightly higher value. So that would suggest maybe not just residential, who are they usually the main properties in there, that some commercial, but probably more agricultural properties are really just waiting until the end of the year to actually settle up their rate accounts, because there is usually a big influx right in the fourth instalment. And really just highlighting that the quotable value objection period ends at the end of the month, and then, end of this week, and then we'll get some information from them about the range and nature of the objections they have received to the values that have been assessed. And I think it'll be really interesting to see if it is people want higher or lower values attached to their properties, or it's a real mix. So happy to answer any questions in those three sections.
Thank you. Any indication of how many objections have been coming in?
No, I've had nothing so far.
Are they processing them as they get them?
They certainly are. They record them and try and start resolving them, because there is quite a tight deadline to resolve the objections that they set themselves, and we really do want them all tidied up by the end of June. So the simple ones, they will certainly resolve pretty quickly, but sometimes they are quite complex, and so we're looking forward to receiving that information sort of next week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just looking at bottom of page 49, top of page 50, talking about the key change. This is the annual plan and the LTP. You're saying the key change between year 3 of the 2021-31 LTP and what is now year 4 of the 2021-20 is a significant increase in water capital requirements, which is putting pressure on borrowing and rates levels. Well, you obviously know there's pressure being put on. What are the likely impacts on borrowing and rates levels? Can we actually start sharing some of this information with the community now, even if it is on potential rather than an actual basis? And if we can't, when?
Well, the end of this month. I mean, you've already had discussions on the annual plan already, but the collective impact will all be available at the end of this month when it goes out for consultation.
I've had a 45 South interview yesterday and Real Radio this morning where I am talking about some of that impact, particularly the water one, which we know is the biggest challenge for us. The video has been created as part of the engagement, and it's talking about the requirement for if we do what's proposed over the next 10 years and we can't find any better way of funding it and making it more efficient and affordable, we are looking at over $400 million a year in capital expenditure for over that time, and that's a very, very significant amount. On average, $40 million a year, and I'm being very clear about that challenge, that we are working on it and looking at how can we reduce it, because the next few years are increased on what they currently are, but it's the years after that that it gets really costly. And yeah, we're going to be front footing that as part of that campaign, using video and online live stream Q&A sessions and public meetings. So yeah, we don't want our public to be in any doubt about the challenges we're facing and trying to deal with. Any other questions, Councillor Blackler? Thank you.
Just back to rates, Mr. Hope, and around the QV increases. I was just wondering if for the benefit of the public, you could provide a really simple explanation as to why an increase in property values aren't the primary driver of an associated increase in rates.
Attempted many times to come up with a simple answer, and I'm still scratching for it after a number of years. I mean, it's the values. Yeah, it never automatically leads to an increase in rates. It's just whether your property has gone up more or less than everybody else's. So if it's gone up more, you're going to have a slightly higher share. But the big thing that sort of limits the impact of valuation changes that we do use a lot of fixed charges, particularly the uniform annual charge, the board charge, and of course the water and sewer charges are fixed charges, so they have nothing to do with the value of the property. And we collect more than 50% of the rates that way. So the bigger impact is the higher capital value properties that don't receive other services. So agricultural properties, they have more of that direct relationship with changes in values and movement in their rates. So it's not that simple. It's we do use a complex rating system to try and be transparent about the charges that people receive, but it makes any sort of overall comments very difficult to make. Sorry.
So yeah, it's not only is it not a primary driver, it is not a driver at all of any increase, because there is no increase because of that. Individually, there can be, as Mr. Hope said, because values do go up at by different percentages, and it's those compared to the averages that can mean that property has an increase, but this property over here has a decrease. So yeah. So, as you may have seen on social media, I've been trying to explain that to people, and some accept that and understand it, and some don't. It's not easy because of just the timing of when we actually set our budgets and when we apply the new values. Councillor McCone, and then Councillor Ryan.
Well, just page 51, there's mention there of a procurement community of practice and then a policy procurement will start a review in March. Could you just tell us more about that, please?
So that's just trying to, it's a way to expand the areas that have really good procurement practices and well-skilled people, to expand that across the organisations to so have a way to share learnings really effectively and improve the practice overall for all of council. And so the policy will be coming to the next Performance Risk Committee as a draft for review by the governance team prior to it being adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Just really excited in community development to read about Beyond, that being led by Youth Town and supported by Stronger Waitaki. I just really I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to engage with the Youth Council or have a representative in that working group. We've got a really great group of young people involved in Youth Council this year who are engaged, and yeah, having those youth voices there would be really good if there was an opportunity. Yeah.
No, I think it's a really good suggestion. I'll follow that up. Oh, Jason.
We'll go to Jason. Yeah.
Through the chair, and I was present at the Youth Council meeting yesterday and saw that enthusiasm for myself. So Youth Town through Pip, she's leading the process, but I will make sure that offer is extended and duly considered. But I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Right, any other questions? We move to the next one. Thank you, Mr. Hope. And we'll go to health and safety update, and we'll go to Mr. Hope.
This is probably the one that I'm least aware of the underlying issue, so we're probably just going to end up recording any questions and getting back to you on that one because I probably won't be able to answer them.
Right. Okay, do we have any questions? Councillor Blakely?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just keen to understand with the health and safety reporting what coverage it has, i.e. for a specific example, would incidents at the airport, for example, be reported through to us, or other organisations that we have, or other parts of the organisation that we have oversight of, or are they the specifically operational parts of council?
Mr. Palmley's just itching to talk about the airport, but I think the airport would be, or pretty much an exception in terms of anything else where we're directly involved in the operations. They would be captured in this in the health and safety reporting.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Yeah, it's our operations or our contractors who are acting on behalf of us. The airport is treated separately and doesn't come under our health and safety advisor because it's a different regime, including the CAA. One of the issues we have is that at the moment when incidents happen at the airport, they're not reported to us, they're reported to the CAA, and that information isn't automatically passed on. So we're trying to get a system in place so that we can understand what's happening out there, and when incidents happen that we have that information, because we don't automatically get it at the moment.
So in due course, once that's in place, it would be reasonable to expect that we'll kind of see that high level oversight of anything that's happening out here.
Yeah, when we have that information, we can include that as part of our reporting.
Okay, anything else? Health and safety? Okay, that's that one. So thank you again, Mr. Hope. We now move on to Assets Group update, and it'll be you, Mr. Hope.
Oh, this is where I have got some systems with the two gentlemen in the back here, so they'll roll forward and answer any questions.
Righto. Right, councillors, Councillor Hopkins, just noting 5 minutes left. So
Right, well, I shall be quick. Page 58. I don't understand the paragraph about the property strategy implementation. I can't make sense of it. If somebody can explain that, I'd be very grateful. On page 59, there's a reference to the possibility of having a tenant for number 1 Thames Street. Is there such a tenant? And on page 60, there's a reference to the Event Centre and Apollo Projects Limited is working on the detailed feasibility study. Has a contract been signed with them, please?
okay, working through in order. What was the first one?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the first one myself.
Well, if you look on page 58,
Oh, okay, so the property strategy implementation.
current set of 31 tranche one properties.
So we're going to go straight to the answer now.
My understanding, obviously not being involved in that in any detail, is there is a list of what they're calling tranche one properties, which are the priority ones to be worked through. And essentially there's an update on the status of that list.
Thank you. And then the second one was
the tenant at number 1, Thames Street.
With regard to number 1, I believe we have a real estate agent involved. They are working with multiple prospective tenants, but nothing has been forthcoming yet.
Thank you. And the event centre contract.
And with the event centre, we have engaged Apollo to complete the detailed feasibility report. That essentially is a detailed specification list, which would form the basis of the specifications in our contract. So we will receive that, we will review that, we will agree on the content of that, and then that will be appended to the contract that we will sign.
Thank you. Just on the event centre, while we're on that one, what's the current timeline looking like? Can you give an indication of where that's sitting?
Early 2026.
Right. I noticed there was a media article about the North Saga Rugby looking for a new home, and I think the assumption was made that we're kicking them out of there while work goes on, but that's not the case, is it? It's that they won't have the changing rooms and so forth. There will be the demolition of the grandstand will be happening, which they've asked for, and that the new event centre will be built, which will have changing rooms in there for them in the future. So again, something that they've asked for. Is that a reasonable summary?
A very good summary. As you've indicated, the incorporation of the demolition of the grandstand was brought into this stage of the project, essentially at their request, and they are working with the fundraising trust to raise the funds necessary to construct that grandstand as part of stage 2. And obviously, as a consequence of that, it does impact on their rugby season while the construction takes place. And we are working with them and other sports codes to determine, I guess, an appropriate venue for the Heartland competition. And I do know that at least one meeting has been held with them and those other sports codes.
Thanks very much. Councillor Blackland.
I was just wondering if there was the ability to provide an update on how the fundraising for the shortfall is trending or tracking, and also the existing pledges. If we've still got certainty around them coming in.
So yes, I believe we still have certainty around those pledges coming in. That's obviously handled through the trust, but they have assured us there is certainty around those pledges. I guess some of the community is looking for that ground to be broken. So once we do break ground, obviously there'll be some certainty from the community around that. You may have noticed some social media activity over the weekend where the trust is initiating some community fundraising initiatives, starting off with a disco that they're starting to promote and advertise at the moment. So they are very active in trying to secure that remaining $4 million for stage 1.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, just to come, if somebody could amplify the information given about the ORC classifying the Dunback Domain Boys Brigade building being a hazardous activities and industry list site, I'd be grateful. And just a couple of questions with roading.
We'll deal with property matters first. We go to that one.
So with regard to Dunback, yes, obviously you're aware of what occurred with the removal of the building. Because the removal essentially took place without any sort of contamination management plan, and nobody was really aware as to the process that was followed or how it took place. ORC took a conservative approach and basically advised us it's considered a contaminated site until we actually go and confirm that there is no further risk.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question on page 58 on the community housing and the fact that we're working through compliance within that. But I note and I will ask, is there a correlation between the fact that Palmerston's flats are only 45% compliant and they are also showing as very little demand for them with high priority? Is it simply that people don't want to go and move into a substandard cold concrete block dwelling?
Not that I'm aware of. There is actually no wait list at the moment in Palmerston for long-term accommodation. So that is the reason why we're looking at short-term accommodation. I guess in addition to that, I'm also aware that some of the existing tenants, some of the properties that are requiring some upgrades, work on them, prefer to stay where they are as opposed to moving into some modernised ones. So I'm not sure that that is the case.
And do we know, sorry if it's in there, the occupancy of the Palmerston ones is?
Not sure it is in there, but I can come back to you on that.
Okay, no, thank you. Oh, the end of February, it's 100% across the complexes, so it must be full, but without a waiting list perhaps. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just two very quick questions on roading. The first one references the resurfacing of 9 kilometres of reseal. I'm just wondering if that could be, if any of that funding from Waka Kotahi or from NZTA, as it's now known initially, could be applied to seal extensions, given the persistent request for that from at least 2 sources. And the other question for roading is, do the roading team think there would be an overall improvement in ride quality results in 2024 if people drove along Humber Street, Hyde Street, Itchen Street or Reed Street? I'm just being a wee bit naughty.
I'll respond to the first question. I'm not sure I can respond to the second. The additional funding is essentially being used in order of priority as far as our roads are concerned. So it probably couldn't be applied to additional extensions. It will be used to maintain our existing sealed roads. But there is a priority list and it's basically moving further down that list.
I've been advised by the police to let you know that the travelling along those roads you mentioned is okay at 50 kilometres an hour. Any other questions?
What are you implying there, Kirchhoff?
Nothing. Any other questions on any of the rest of the assets update? Councillor McCone.
So I just noticed there's a reference to the McLean scale per rabbit population Meraki. Why will we be expected to continue the program in the township? Is that not up to the landowner?
We will be expected to continue it on land that we own. So, yes.
I think it's this ongoing issue around some property owners dealing with the problem and neighbours not, and very quickly infestation happening again on land that's been that has been dealt to. So bring back the rabbit boards. Okay, anything else? Nothing from Artie on water?
Oh. I suppose there is one very quick question. Well, no, you've listed all of the places that Te Mata Aroai have said have to be done. And you've said there's going to be, you'll be looking for a councillor's agreement at the 26th March meeting. What threats or potential risks have Te Mata Aroai advised officers or the council could face if we say can't do it or it's just going to be too costly within the time frame specified?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is that we're seen to be doing the right thing. Like, as I say in this report, we do have another report, a very detailed report going in a couple of weeks, and we'll outline a bit more around that. But my take on it, as long as we've got the money in our annual plan and LTP and we're progressing down the track, then they'll be looking to make an example of the ones in other councils if they're not behaving, I suppose.
Thank you. Councillor McCone.
Sorry, Marty, but I did notice you've got in here the assessment of the two cast iron pipes coming out of the mains. Is there any indication of what condition they are? So I see it says still pending, but that will be expensive if they're going to be attacked.
Yeah, through the chair, initial indications are that the pipes are in really good condition, very good condition actually. But we'll have some more information. We'll come back to a further activity update.
Okay, just on the Eden Street replacement, they discovered coal tar in that site, I believe. Can you tell us what the implications of that are?
Essentially, we'll have to manage that contamination in accordance with best practice and what's required under the district plan and the regional plan. So it's likely to incur some additional cost. I don't know the quantum of that, but yes, it's just more complex and probably affect timeframes and the cost of the project.
Is it just the area that's dug up that has to be sorted, or?
I would have to come back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor
Right.
McCone.
Yes, it is
Oh,
just the area that's disturbed.
Right.
That needs to be addressed, but obviously it's something that as the work progresses, they'll be sort of keeping an eye out for any further evidence of that kind of contamination.
Thank you. Councillor McCone.
Again, just for clarification, I'm just wondering why we're involved with the septic tank cleaning in Hampden. Is it something we have to do, or is that not the private landowner's problem?
So it's a program of work that we took on because of neighbourhood issues, to provide a level of certainty around the tank cleaning, and to help protect the environment and so forth. So in the absence of a council operated wastewater treatment plant, the septic tanks are cleaned on a regular basis by council. And happy for any extra comments that Marty might want to. You were around when we introduced that one.
I've been around for a while, yeah. Yeah, so that's exactly as you've said it. It's fully funded by the residents, so it's through the amenity rate.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Hope, did you have something you wanted to add? No, that's all right. Right, thank you very much, Eric and Marty. Thank you to the rest of the staff who've helped us out today. And thank you, councillors, and anyone who's been watching on stream. So with that, this finishes our council activity update. And we'll have